Welcome in today for another update on my game and how progress is going. As you can see, I've done a little bit more on just sort of laying things out a little bit better, a little bit more playtesting stuff, just to obviously like work out a lot of the numbers have been the biggest thing so far. But I'm gonna go down the list on some of the things that I saw while I was playing that I think are going to need sort of like an immediate change. Um, I did also add in like an adventurer card so you can kind of keep track of your stats and stuff like that. Just as you go, just because then once I have, say, your attack, defense, reaction, damage, block, and vitality or hit points. And then I guess to dive right into sort of one of the things that I noticed is look at all these dice that are on the table. I was really hoping this would be the type of game that you really only need a couple D20 and you can play the game. So some of this is a little bit, it just feels so cluttered. So like these dice are tracking HP. These dice are tracking gold. This is for HP or for vitality. This is for the level. This is tracking vitality for the enemy. And then you put like, say it'll be two enemy cards, say that like the event you chose, you need to fight two. And then you need a dice for like if it's a multi-event, so each person is fighting their own version of this. So each one needs their own HP dice. So there's a little bit of like organization that, I mean, some people might like it. Some people might like all the dice everywhere and, it's cool because you have them. They're all whatever. There's also no percentile dice on Tabletop Simulator. So that's just another thing in and of itself that might make things a little bit easier too. Like if people had that. But one of the things that I thought maybe was, I have it right here on my thing, was number 3. I had 6 things. Number 3 was a better way to keep track of stats, gold, XP, all that stuff. One idea I had was maybe your character card where you're keeping track of your stats and stuff. What if this were dry erase? And then you'd only need a dry erase marker. And you could keep notes on top of the card, and then you don't need a pencil and paper and eraser and all that stuff to carry with you. But that's also another option, is like when say the starter pack or whatever, it comes with a little mini notepad like the size of a card. There's a lot of games that come like that. Obviously not a lot of trading card games, but this is sort of like a trading card game, board game hybrid, I feel like. Where it could include like just like a small, like a golfing pencil, like just like a small pencil to make notes on, as maybe a little more like an easier option. But it would be kind of cool if it were dry erase and then you could just, as you go, like erase 1 and put yourself to level 2, or make this adventure. Then you could name your adventure if you wanted, and put some notes down here at the bottom. I could make this section even bigger, like the enemy cards all have more space, so you could put notes on here. Or like if your weapon has an ability, you could write the ability down there. I think that would be an interesting idea. Some of the other stuff that came up when I was playing, gear might not, I already did nerf the gear a little bit because on one of my play tests, the like player 2 drew an event, got 2 low level things, and ended up drawing 2 gear cards off of that. And both of them, one was like a battle axe and one was like I don't know, some sort of armor. And instantly in one turn, I wrote it down. In one turn was able to go from, they also leveled up from like the experience of the fight. Their attack was 1, which goes into the accuracy of the attack, to 4, which doesn't sound crazy, but when you go from facing what's on here being like way stronger than you to it being weaker than you in one turn, and this is like pretty much the strongest creature you're going to see until you see Crackmaw, like the final boss, that it just super unbalanced. I can make the creatures tougher. Like I can obviously scale up them. So let me get back to it. The player 1 or player 2 went from 1 attack to 4 attack, 1 damage to 10 damage. So that means every time they hit, 10 damage is getting through, which is the max amount of health that anything has. So instant kill anything. And then went from 10 vitality to 17 vitality. So basically doubled their life in one turn, which is obviously broken. So I went through and I nerfed a lot of the gear. I took out. So initially the gear wasn't going to have attack. Like it was only, so like your skill would be what determines if you're able to hit, and then your damage would be determined by whatever weapon you're wielding. I sort of strayed from that a little bit, and then seeing that happen, like with the gear, I sort of went back to it. I just wrote down, drew 2 gear cards. One was from the enemy and one was for the event. So that's another thing where, because of the random nature of the game, it's going to be very hard to sort of balance these things perfectly. But there's just obviously still a lot of balancing stuff to be done. Events or enemy reward need to be nerfed. So along those same lines, maybe certain tier of enemy being what drops gear. And then same thing with event. It would have to be a certain difficulty of event, not one where you're just like, oh, hey, I'll talk this person and, do a reaction interaction, roll a couple of D20s, and then all of a sudden you have a piece of gear. And if that's the case, which is fine, if I end up wanting it to be like much quicker, where by turn 10, this game is over and like you're challenging the boss, that's fine. But it's not really what I'm going for. But by speeding it up, by making it so you're getting gear a lot faster, you're obviously going to get a lot stronger, a lot quicker. So I'm just going to have to figure kind of what feels good for it after playing for a little while. And I talked about the better way of keeping the stats. So more cards with basic combat interactions. So a lot of the event cards. So I'll just start drawing a bunch of them and we'll take a look at them. Oh, they're coming over here. So the quests were kind of cool. I never really filled quests, but it felt really cool to have the quests down. I remember someone commented about that as well. I guess Ticket to Ride has some sort of like open quest system where like you see other people trying to fulfill those quests or something like that. So I have a similar thing, and that was pretty neat just to have like defeat 5 enemies. And so every time, I mean, the one I had up when it was up was defeat 2 humanoids. So player 2 kept getting humanoids, but wasn't defeating them. Player 1 wasn't getting any humanoids. So it was kind of cool where there's an added element of like, ooh, can I get these humanoids? Especially, can I get humanoids that are low level enough for me to kill to fulfill the contract or the quest? So my point with the basic interaction thing is that for a low level, something like this, draw an enemy card, all players fight that enemy independently. So meaning like they both fight it at the same time, but separately, and then repeat 2 more times, which like that's fine. But early on, when you don't have any gear and you're level 1 or level 2 and your stats are really low, so the modifiers you're adding to the dice are just low, and then you end up fighting something like this with 5s across the board for all that stuff, it's just really difficult. And then it kind of slows everything down, which again, I'm fine with. Right now, if you die, you can't do combat your next turn. You can just do one action of whatever the other one. As of right now, it's just selling gear, which, if you don't have gear at that point. Removing status effects, which you wouldn't have because you died, so those all get wiped. And then going to the inn and restoring health, which you already restore your health automatically when you die. By the end of that turn, you have full health. I want to have deciding, should I flee or should I stay? Because also, if you get into combat and you die, you lose combat on your next turn, but you still get the experience from any of the creatures that either you did damage to or did damage to you. So say I'm in this situation where this one's got 100, this one's got 20, and I survive a hit from the 20 and then, from this creature or enemy, and then this enemy deals damage to me too. And so now I'm leaving this with 120 XP. And as of right now, it's 50 XP to level 2, 100, 200, 400. Like it's going to go up just double. So, that can get you, if this is turn 1, you can go into turn, obviously sort of losing turn 2, but then go into turn 3 a level higher, and now you feel a little more confident. So I don't I don't hate that. It's a little clunky obviously right now, so I'm just having to sort of get used to how that's going to feel. So yeah, anyway, kind of making some of these cards a little more straightforward. Just so it's like more fun to be like drawing cards, getting into combat with like an enemy, defeating it hopefully fairly quickly or whatever, and then passing the turn and the other person does the same thing, and just making it feel a little more like every turn is productive in like a fun way and not in more of like a chore kind of way. I wanted to add, so I had mentioned, I think, the absolute success, partial success, partial failure, and absolute failure being like different, the different roles on which role you succeed on, or which role your role is higher on. So right now, if the defender has an absolute success, meaning they roll higher on both dice, they get a counter attack. With the attacker not being able to block, the defender ends up doing full damage to the attacker, which is cool. I like it. But then it makes me feel like, should the absolute success double the damage that you're doing? And then if you are doubling the damage on an absolute success, maybe that might be too much. But then I don't know what like a happy medium is between doing your full damage. Early on, that doesn't feel really cool. You're doing 1 damage, 2 damage. So rolling higher on both is just, it's sort of anticlimactic, especially because I added in the spell, like the D4 for a spell dice. So the spell ends up kind of doing a lot of the heavy lifting if it finally hits, which it has been. Like I've had some success with it. So early on, when you're fighting things, it feels like your regular attack just isn't really that good until you have a big number in your damage number. So I don't know. I was kind of messing around with maybe doubling your damage if you do have an absolute success, just because it feels already a little weighted towards the defense winning more. And now if there's a counterattack, it's basically more dangerous to attack than it is to defend, which is fine, especially if someone's going to PvP. It would put a pause to them wanting to do that unless they're way stronger than you. Just because, the defending is a lot easier. But I guess my point is, it almost feels like doubling the damage is like, if it feels bad just having it do your full regular damage, then why not just make the damage values higher? So yeah, we'll figure that one out. And then sort of along those lines, a natural 20 on the dice, meaning an automatic hit. So not meaning an automatic absolute success, but just meaning just an automatic hit. So you would just do your damage. Then also have it so that basically that second dice is just so you can see if you would have an absolute success and then do double damage. I just want to mention, or maybe next time I'll talk about it, draw some enemy cards here. Just some lore on like what the types of enemies you're going to be fighting. So I had mentioned it's sort of centered around being in a city, because if I ever do an expansion, I love survival games and stuff, just leaning into going towards the wilderness, or I really like the idea of a frozen tundra type of thing. I'm using a D&D, a homebrewed world that I made once, as a rough baseline of how I envision the world. So I would like to branch out to different regions of the world. So I'm sort of leaning more into like the city aspect. So there's the King Street Gang, or the King Street faction, Juniper District faction. There's mythical humanoids and mythical beasts. So there's like beast types and humanoid types. And then there's the humanoids. There's certain ones that are faction humanoids. Anyway, so there's things that have you finding, like drawing cards until you find certain different ones. Just because I think it might be cool to sort of decide earlier on which direction you want to go. So like the humanoids and stuff, I'm sort of making them have more likely to find gear on them, more likely to find a little bit of gold on them, whereas like a beast would just be mostly, especially the mythical beasts, but like mythical has way higher XP drops And then beasts have higher XP drops, but they don't drop like gold or gear. Just in terms of like realism of like finding, like you're not gonna go fight a bear and then have it, or a snake or something, and it's gonna have like a sword on it or whatever. I'd like to go a little bit deeper into sort of the lore of that world that I had created and how much of it I want to use for this, whatever. I just think lore is very important to sort of making the world feel a little more complete and not like you're just throwing cards together or just throwing random stuff on the like random enemies, like creature types and stuff on the board. So yeah, I'd like to go a little bit more into the lore. Thank you guys for your support. I will add the rules in again in the description of the video. I'll add the Discord in the video. I mean, like, just it's not like a cool fleshed out Discord like you're probably in for other things. It's just like another way to chat if you have any ideas and stuff like that. Yeah, so I'll see you guys next time. I appreciate the support as always. We'll see you on the next one.